I don't know what the Todd father is cooking up. Um, I am concerned. I don't even know if I want to sleep tomorrow or tonight. Maybe both. And that leads us to our last topic, which is somewhat minuscule, but at least worth discussion. Daniel Sprong, obviously, he's not with the team currently. He's in the organization. He was placed on waivers. Um, Good old John Hayden, who will punch your lights out, but also on several occasions has gone to me and he's gone, "Are you okay?" I'm just like, in the softest voice, I'm like, "You cannot do that. You are out there punching these grown men, and then you're talking to me like an ASMR YouTuber. Do not do that. Pick a lane, please." John Hayden's been called up to take his spot. Daniel Sprong did clear waivers to the chagrin of many on Twitter, which isn't a high bar. You can essentially have no brain cells and be on Twitter and make comments, otherwise known as some fan pages. And he's played now 2 games with the Coachella Valley Firebirds and scored 3 goals. I know he had an assist yesterday as well. I don't know if he had any tonight. I can do that while I'm yapping. Um, but after the game on Saturday, he made some comments that were unique, per se, and he said outright, which some words that I'm sure a lot of players who end up down there will think at any point in time. I want to prove that I don't belong here. He also said he was too many steps ahead early in the game and had to slow it down mentally and get on that speed. Folks did not like that, um, for a multitude of reasons. Um, Silvia, we will go with you. Jade, we will go with you after that. Our thoughts on comments made by the balding man and your opinions on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, I'm sure he is definitely not the first player to have thought it. I think he might be one of the first players to say it out loud. And I think it has that'll have an impact on in the locker room, I would say. I don't think anybody, especially developing players, want to hear that, this guy isn't good enough or is too good to be around them. Like, I'm sure, like, here's the thing with Daniel Sprong is that he's like not totally wrong, right? He is too good for the AHL. He's been in the NHL for a really long time. I think he started with after he was drafted by Pittsburgh, he started like pretty much after he was drafted. I think he went back to the Q. That might be totally wrong. Wherever he was in the juniors, like a few games, and then he was back up. It was a whole thing. Um, that being said, though, like he's also just not good enough for the NHL. Like he's kind of in between right now. And I think it's a good mindset to have as a player. You do want to prove that you are better than a minor league team. And you do want to prove that you are good enough to play in the pros. I just don't think that it's just not a good locker room like builder, right? Especially as a vet. You don't want your vets to be saying that. You don't the Coachella Firebirds are like a fantastic team. I think they're second or third in their division. I think they're seventh. Yeah, they're seventh in the league. Stats boy, please. So like that's a whole like it's not like he's playing with a terrible team. Am I right? Oh, Charles, yes.
Second in the division, seventh in the league, ma'am.
Yes, thank you so much. I love being right. So like he's not wrong. It's a good sentiment to have. It's a good goal to have. Is it the way that you build up players in your locker room as a vet? You're playing with all these young guys who maybe have never had a chance to play in the pros. No, it's not. It's also just not a good team player look. I think Daniel Sprong has already had several like he's kind of not a locker room guy situations happen to him before. So it doesn't put a good look on him. It's not the best PR, really. And I think that's where a lot of people got stuck on it. Is the fact that it just sounds mean. And a lot of people really like those players in the AHL, and they don't want their little the little guys to be talked about like that. So, and I think that was part of that big reaction that we saw on social media. But like I said, good player or good goal for Daniel Sprong to have. I don't know if like that's a thing. That's an inside thought. I don't know if that's something that you share with the class.
I agree with that. I definitely understand his frustration. He seemed really excited to be back in Seattle. I feel like I'm just repeating things that I've said a million times already. Because I've talked about it with a lot of different people, but I feel like he was really excited to be back in Seattle, and that's fantastic for him. But he just wasn't quite at the NHL level anymore. I feel like he just when he was on the ice, it just didn't really show that like he deserved to be there. It feels mean, but like he didn't really show, in my opinion, that he really deserved to be there. And so I think going down to the AHL and then immediately having two really good games kind of shows that like that's a better suited place for you, at least for right now. And I definitely think that like that should be a goal of his to get back to the NHL at some point. Granted, those comments weren't super cool of him. And that kind of rubbed me the wrong way personally. But also the way that some players, kind of him included based on those comments, say like treat the AHL. It's like they treat it like it's like a death sentence almost. Like you go to the AHL and your career is ruined for the rest of forever. And that's just not the case. So many players get sent down and just need like a rehab stint or like, go back down there and work on fine-tuning parts of your game, and then you can come back up to the NHL and you might go on a tear, but that's I don't know. The AHL is so important, and it's still a professional league in the way that a lot of fans, people that don't know that much about hockey, people that, players even treat it. It's like you go down and that's it. Your career's done. They treat it like it's not much better than a beer league. So I have a lot of feelings that are more like AHL specific related, but also if you're going back down and you're already doing better, maybe that's a sign.
Yeah, I mean, and also to that point, specifically to the AHL thing, you have players on there who are like lifelong AHLers who are genuinely having like blowout seasons every season. They never see the NHL, but they're still, I think one thing that's incredibly special about the AHL, and this kind of goes back to a conversation we had about how teams interact with the communities around them.
Hmm.
AHL teams are so good about building the communities that they're in and interacting with them and being like huge parts of them. I think, for an example, when the fires in LA first started, I think the Kings AHL team kind of like got on gear to start doing donation drives before the Kings did. So like, yeah, there, and I could be totally wrong. That's how I saw it on my timeline. Um, but like there's AHL teams, because they're so much smaller, you have to be able to build that community, to have
Yeah.
that community in the space. And that's like a big part of the AHL player development, is learning how to be a community member. And I think a lot of players who go directly to the NHL or never have an AHL stint don't get that. Um, I don't see how you can go to the AHL and then like look at these players, these AHL vets who've been there their entire lives, who are making good money, who are building their families around this organization and this team, and then go, yeah, I deserve to be somewhere else. I'm better than everybody here. And Obviously, that's not what he said word for word, but that is what it sounded like. Even when you listen to the entire comment that he made, that is what it sounded like.
I also feel like going back to what I said about him being like, excited to be back in Seattle. I understand where he's coming from in the sense that he got traded back to Seattle and then got healthy scratched for, I can't actually remember how many games it was right now, but healthy scratched for a good amount of games and then put on waivers, sent down to the AHL. Like I understand where he's coming from being frustrated. you're so excited to come back to this place that you know, and this organization that you're familiar with, and a handful of players that you're still familiar with, and then you don't get the playing time and then you get sent down. His execution of what he said was just not good. Needed some media training.
Yeah, there's a few things I want to speak on that because what Sylvia mentions about, the AHL, I mean, you could really kind of and Sylvia probably might know it better, at least in regards to Tri-City and the Americans, right? But like like minor league teams, whether it is hockey or baseball, because I go to the Everett Aquasox games. There are folks, like old folks, who have been going there for years, and they might not go to a Mariners game, even though that is the goal of what the Aqua Sox are doing. But they love the Aqua Sox because it's right in their community, and they've been doing these events for years. Same with the Rainiers. There are people who care more. Same with, I know, obviously when the Kraken came to Seattle, it was a big deal to have an NHL team. But I'll notice there are fans of the Thunderbirds, and I mentioned them first because I was raised a bird, and the Silver Tips, who care, they do not care about the Kraken. The Thunderbirds are where, like, whether it's their billet families, or they do the booster events, like those things matter, and the players are far more accessible, at those levels. So it's like, yeah, like that is a great point. So we don't have brownie points, but it's always like it's always fun when we do. I don't have anything for you. Um, oh, well, I already gave you one of
Put 20,
these.
put 20 in here. Put a 20
No,
in.
no, I need that. I gotta eat tomorrow. Jesus. It's like that is a relevant point. Um, and again with Daniel here, like, yeah, he was not playing at a level that was satisfactory for the Kraken. He doesn't back check, he doesn't do anything in the defensive zone. Again, as someone who's watched it, like, I don't like the idea that he didn't get a chance because he had it with Vancouver. They put him in the press box. He had 10 games with Seattle, which I know it isn't 40, but you got to do things in those 10 games to get on. If you're not scoring these wicked snipes, you have to do other things to warrant some value at the NHL level. Maybe if you are helping the younger guys like Shane, like Ty's younger than him, and there are a lot of players that are younger than him. Maybe you'd have some value, but you didn't. They decided to bring in John Hayden, who is a guy who's largely been a death piece in his career, right? And bring him up. You cleared waivers. If someone wanted you and they saw your value that the Seattle hasn't, someone would have picked you up. They didn't. And if you wanted to leave and you wanted to be out of the organization, you could have said, I don't want to be outrighted. It happens all the time with waivers. I see it in the MLB, I see it in the NHL. Like, it happens. You could have, if you didn't want to be there, you didn't have to be. But obviously, you had to stick up your ass and you said, okay, I don't belong here. I'm going to prove it. And sure, maybe you proved it, with your goals against the Chicago Wolves. Um, I'm thankful that those AHL teams were not the ones over the weekend fighting each other on Twitter, which is a whole other thing. Um, but yeah, to that point mentioned earlier about the young guys, this is a Coachella Valley team now this year that is largely Kraken prospects. The last few years it has been guys who are essentially career AHLers. Andrew Podorowski. I talked to Max McCormick in training camp this year, right? A guy that has been in the Seattle system the last few years. I think he was with them the inaugural season. Yeah, and he went down to the Charlotte Checkers when they shared the AHL team with the Panther. I think so.
Enter.
Panther. Um, you know, and I talked to Max, and I talked to him. I was like, "Hey, man, do you like you've obviously been with this organization. You've seen some of the younger guys like Shane go on. Like, have you ever thought about wanting to go somewhere else and maybe get more of an NHL opportunity?" He's like, "No." He's like, he's fine with his role and he's happy to mentor these kids. That's what you want from a guy who has gotten time at the NHL level, is to mentor these guys. And especially right now with this Firebirds roster, yeah, like Sylvia mentioned, there are a lot of little guys here. Leighton Road, Logan Morrison are two of the guys that played on Sprong's line tonight. Yanni Newman, Ryan Winterton, Edward Shale, Jagger Furcus. Luke Hedman, first ever Kraken ever, Luke Hedman, Jacob Melanson. Like I take out McKinnon, Biro, and Myers of the other of forwards there, and those are all kids, right? Granted, Henman's been with the Firebirds the last few years, and so have Melanson and Newman, but they're so young prospects. Like you could really make an impact on these guys. You've scored at the initial level, like Silvia mentioned. You've been around for a while. You can make an impact. Instead, you're bitching during a press conference. To the three media that are at the fire. I'm not trying to disrespect, but some of the questions they ask, I've listened to the post game. They're not great. Um, it is remarkable, and to the point like you've both made. Sure, I understand what he's saying. I don't think like the idea is wrong. Like, yes, you want to make it back to the NHL. You want to prove, hey, I have value. I just needed maybe a tune-up, right? But how he went about it with that comment and just given some of the character things that, you know, there's a lot we could talk about with Daniel Sprong. It's not surprising to me per se, right? So, um, that's my thoughts on it. Like, I was telling Sylvia before we started here, and it wouldn't have been in our cold open. Sorry, Sylvia. Um, like, I had to read it a few times because I was confused by it. I was like, huh? Um, so yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. As we've said, there's a lot of young talent on this Firebirds team that will represent the future of this franchise. And
Hmm.
you'd like a guy who has spent a good amount of time in the NHL to show them the ropes, to show them how he trains, how he prepares for a game, what works for him, to impact a game. Um, and maybe he is doing that in the locker room. And obviously we don't see it. We're not in Coachella Valley. I'm in a really cold place right now in Seattle with, what is the sun?
Yep.
Um,
It was sunny out here today. It was
it
like 40.
was. I was recording earlier, and that window back there was like just blinding. It didn't help that it would bounce off this head. So,
One day,
um,
we should carve out some time for me to talk about how I think the Coachella Valley Firebirds should have been in Yakima all along. Um, I have a PowerPoint.
oh, PowerPoint. Okay. Well, with how things are going, I feel like we'll need the positivity and the non-negative side of things. So we
Hmm.
can we can work that out. But yeah, it has been the past week for your Seattle Kraken as it's by the time you're seeing this January 13th, 2025. It's let me look here at the upcoming week because they'll close out this road trip, this 5 game road trip, and then they'll come back to as we mentioned, they've got a big 2 4 oh no, it's not a yeah, I like normal long homestands, right? Because there's 4 games at home, one against Edmonton on the road. Then the next day they play Anaheim here, and they have the Sharks here. So it's like it could be a nice, perfect, altogether 6 game homestand. But Edmonton, those Oilers, I mean, terrible. Yeah. Anyway, they close out. They got this week here, Tuesday, in Pittsburgh against the Penguins. I know people who will be there. Staring at Sylvia. Oh, oh wow. Uh-oh. We're
Wow.
gonna get out of here before Flyers and Penguins discourse starts. They go to Winnipeg to play the Jets, and I can only imagine what the score will be against Winnipeg if you lost 6-2 to Detroit today. Then they come back home and they have the Los Angeles Kings on Saturday at 7 o'clock at Climate Pledge Arena. So, uh, folks, until we see you next time, take care of yourselves. Maybe that includes not watching Kraken hockey. Maybe that includes finding another hobby, crocheting, maybe,
Outside.
um,
There's some grass.
grass,
Breathe some
uh,
fresh air.
watch some real hockey.
They're
Um,
on YouTube.
yep, free. You don't have to worry about. It's always funny. People still text me about how to watch these games. I was like, they put them on more things. I can't help you. Um, yeah, take care of yourselves. Be well, and do whatever you can to make today a great day, and less of a Daniel Sprong day.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey. Where are you going to watch all those Kraken away games?
Kraken away games, making a push. I was thinking of coming here just because Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports, only if that's okay with you.
I mean, I love that idea. Hope to see you here.